Hello, welcome to another episode of Technology Philosophy. Today I would like to describe Derrida's general theory of subjectivation. While Derrida's apparent focus is deconstructing the traditional logocentric impulse to personal identity, the search for false reassurance and permanence, it is nevertheless possible to obtain an affirmative account of Derrida's subjectivation. First, considering definition and grounds, Derrida's definition of the subject, personal identity, consciousness, is a dynamic flux of different unconnected perceptions. Derrida is inspired initially by Hume's declaration that we are nothing but a collection of different perceptions which succeed each other in a perpetual flux and movement. The mind is a kind of theater where perceptions successively make their appearance, intermingle, and glide away. Subjectivity is difference, a succession of perceptions, impressions, and ideas that are different, unconnected, and do not comprise a unity. Each perception is a distinct existence, different and distinguishable from every other. Further, there is nothing belonging to these perceptions and uniting them together. The claim to personal identity is merely a quality which we attribute to them because the union of their ideas in our imagination when we reflect upon them. Subjectivity is not a unitary phenomenon. Identity is not a unit. Rather, it is a quality which we attribute to a collection of perceptions. There are no grounds for subjectivity as being unitary. This is in contravention to the traditional view of the subject, where there is persistence and unity of consciousness across time. Instead, for Derrida, the antiquated Cartesian subject must be erased into the discontinuous flow of experience because there is no primordial nature of pure self-presence and identity. Not only are there no grounds for persistence and unity, but also temporality would prevent any identity of presence due to the impossibility of a literal self-presence. The living present cannot be captured in the act because it can only be made self-present once it is past. Now understanding subjectivation as the flux of different perceptions regarding genesis, the subject does not constitute itself. Subjectivation is an effect of difference, the play of forces that produce all identities. Nothing precedes difference. Subjectivity is an effect of difference, an effect inscribed in a system of difference. The subject is not present, or above all present to itself before difference. The subject is not primary and privileged. Rather, what precedes it is the world system of difference and constitution. Subjectivity belongs a priori to the order of the constituted. Presence, especially consciousness, is no longer the central form of being, but instead a determination and effect of being. Difference is a concept Derrida uses as a tool in his process of deconstruction, which he also calls a grammatology, a dissemination, and the supplement. Reminiscent of Heidegger, the main target of deconstruction is the logocentric metaphysics that for Derrida has plagued all of Western philosophy. Both deconstruction and difference, as one of its methods, simultaneously acknowledge, challenge, and exceed the logocentric metaphysical system. Logocentrism is the desire for presence, a presence of truth, being, meaning, and knowledge, a full and certain knowledge of reality and oneself as a conscious subject. Logocentrism has incorrectly privileged the traditional view of the subject as conscious, self-present, and present. The structure of logocentric presence is binary pairs, where one side has been favored, privileged, in a hierarchy over the other, such as the first term in presence-absence, being nothingness, mind-body, speech-writing, and identity-difference. Deconstruction seeks to remedy this. For example, in identity-difference, now understanding the subject as dynamic flux means that there is no identity, only difference. In the concept of difference, Derrida employs both senses of the French verb différer, to differ and to defer. In the case of the meaning to differ, there are two aspects of difference. First, difference is the difference between a binary pairing's identity and opposite. Second, difference is a movement, process, or concept that precedes the binary pair. Difference precedes. It is a proceeding that is the play of forces that produces all identities. Difference is spelled with an A to subvert the traditional privileging in the binary pair. In this case, speech over writing, because the A in difference cannot be heard, only written or read. Difference, différance, accords primacy to absence over presence. Thus, the metaphysical hierarchy is exposed as arbitrary and capable of change. Difference is also used in the other meaning of differ, to defer. In this case, it is in the sense of postponing identity and meaning, such that all texts are open to interpretations. No term has identity in and of itself because identity is established dynamically in relation to other terms which in themselves have no identity. The difference between terms constitute their identities. Relating difference to subjectivation, difference is the non-primacy of the subject, the preceding forces that interact to constitutively produce identity relative to other terms. The movement of difference produces the subject. The subject is a dynamic flux of perceptions, an effect of difference, and also a text. Difference, as writing, constitutes the subject. The subject is produced in the world system, written as a system of relations between strata, the psyche, society, and the world. The subject is as any other sign, text, or writing. Personal identity has the same structure as a sign. Like any text, the subject has no intentional identity or unity of meaning, and is open to multiple ongoing readings and interpretations. Personal identity has the same structure as the sign because it stands in for something missing, the absence of its own presence and identity. The subject arises in lack, since it is nothing in itself and requires supplementation to make up for a deficiency, to compensate for a primordial non-self-presence. To counter its non-self-presence, the subject opens to exteriority, to others, as in Heidegger's Mitsein and Simondon's collective individuation, to produce its identity relative to other terms. Thank you. This has been a summary of Derrida's general theory of subjectivation.